Hi, I'm Emily. Welcome back to my channel, That Carnivore Life. Thank you for joining me today as I discuss my journey through being a carnivore. Today, I'm discussing the differences between a foodie, food freedom, and a food addict. I have found so much food freedom through eating carnivore that I feel it's important for me to address this topic as to what my journey has looked like. Before I share about what that freedom looks like, I want to cover the differences between the three topics and also what it looked like before I found the food freedom. First, let's talk about a foodie. A foodie is somebody who finds food a hobby. It's something enjoyable, it's something that helps them relax, but it isn't an addiction. It doesn't make them a slave to food. It doesn't control their life. There's no negative feelings or negative consequences surrounding the food. It would literally be like a hobby of going snowboarding or kayaking. Food addiction, however, think about an alcoholic. Now, okay, a food addiction for some addicts might be more subtle than alcoholism for an alcoholic. However, sometimes it's not. A food addiction often looks like metabolic disease. It often can manifest in certain food disorders. Binge eating would be one of those disorders. It certainly is more subtle in some ways. Food is a part of our everyday lives. We need food to survive. However, when you come across somebody who's morbidly obese or someone who's dealing with type 2 diabetes, this is where you'll commonly see food addiction. Also, if you're close enough to somebody who is a binge eater that you have front row seats like you would with an alcoholic, you'll definitely see food addiction come through. So just to cover binge eating for a moment, binge eating is where you eat so much food, you consume so much calories to the point where it makes you physically ill or you're physically in pain, and then you try and diet or limit how much you eat for a period of time, and then you binge again. Whether or not someone purges, binge eating is that. Usually a binge eater is doing that to numb certain feelings. For some people it's a form of cutting, yet they may not cut themselves. They may treat themselves the same way through binge eating to feel that physical pain and sickness that comes along after a massive food intake, because it's easier to deal with physical pain than it is to deal with emotional pain. Usually those people who are binge eating, they're aware of the pain that it's going to cause them, yet even if they want to stop, they can't, and that's where the addiction comes into play. Food freedom, however, is where food is something that just happens. It doesn't control life. It doesn't negatively affect emotions. It's actually just no big deal. It just happens. You get hungry, you eat, you stop eating. You're not thinking about food 24/7. You're not planning your next meal or your next restaurant or your next party around food. In fact, you go to a party and then you're like, oh, I'm not going to be eating. Is that weird? Should I take something? Is that weird? It's just, you just rock up to that party. Food is no big deal. That's food freedom. So I want to discuss a bit more life as a food addict. Now, I have front row seats. I have a first person experience as to life as a food addict and also life as a binge eater, serial dieter. I mean, you name it. It's there for me. I remember back when I was 15, one of the jobs that I had was cold canvassing. So I would knock on doors and I would sell products. Some of that money would go to a charity and I would keep a commission. A lot of these places were in industrial strips or in shopping strips. We didn't really go in shopping centers, so we were out in the element. We also didn't go to residential areas. What that looked like for me is in these industrial areas, all of them had at least one outlet for food. There were fried food, so fries, potato cakes, scalloped potatoes, depending on where you are, lots of candy bars, and lots of sugar-filled drinks like different flavored milks, sodas, all of that. Every time we moved to a new area, which was several times a day, I would get a couple of candy bars, chocolate, of course, maybe a chocolate milk, maybe a bottle of Coke. It was never healthy food. Usually some hot food. We were canvassing in winter, so fries, potato cakes, and it was like 4 potato cakes. It wasn't like one. Now this was every single day. I did this 5 days of the week. I would have breakfast at home. I would get something near the office when I got in. I would get several stuff eating out throughout the day. We would also meet up for lunch. There was usually 4 of us. We'd meet up for lunch. That was usually a pasta meal, like a hot pasta meal meal with a chocolate bar and again a Coke or a cream of soda, more chocolate bars throughout the afternoon. And then I would get dinner on the way home, and then I would have dinner at home because I wouldn't want to tell my parents that I'd already eaten and what I'd eaten. And then of course we'd usually have dessert, and if not, there would also be soda at the house as well. This was every single day. And the other thing that I found as a food addict is food was constantly on my mind. I constantly wanted to eat. There were certain foods, it didn't matter if it was healthy, like I always wanted to eat. I always wanted more. I couldn't really feel when I was satiated. I didn't have a satiation option in my body. It was intense. It was crazy. I felt terrible. I knew I shouldn't be eating those foods or that amount. People say everything in moderation, but what about when you can't moderate? Like an alcoholic, are we going to tell an alcoholic everything in moderation, alcohol in moderation? No, that would be awful to them to tell them that. And yet that's what I was being told. I remember going to a dietitian and her diagnosing me as an anorexic. She explained that not all anorexics are super skinny. That is very dangerous for them, obviously. If you get super skinny, that can lead to organ failure and you can die. But being an overweight anorexic is more subtle, which in sometimes can get really dangerous because you end up with things like metabolic syndrome, type 2 diabetes. You end up with things like fatty liver, issues with your heart, issues with breathing, issues with your skin, the largest organ in your body. So that was a real surprise to me. Her coaching for what to do was everything in moderation, which isn't going to work if you're an addict, just like we wouldn't say that to an alcoholic. That did not change. I ended up studying for a couple of years. At that point, I went low sugar, so under 10 grams of sugar per 100 grams. If it was under that, that's what I would eat. But again, if you're eating copious amounts of food that is that, it still doesn't actually make that much of a difference. It's an improvement. It doesn't make that much of a difference. When I was 20, I started working in a call center company. One of the things that I noticed there, because my habits had not changed, I went back to what I was doing at around the age of 15, is I would think, no, I'm going to eat healthy. I've bought my lunch. I'm going to eat healthy. And the next minute, I'm walking back from the cafeteria, munching on candy bars and potato cakes with a bottle of Coke in my hand that I'd already opened and started drinking. I didn't really have a conscious awareness of what I was doing. So again, a similar thing, I was driving at this point. So I would have breakfast at home. I'd stop in McDonald's. I would get a bacon and egg McMuffin, 2 to 4 hash browns and an orange juice. I would get to work. Now, work is a 40-minute drive. I would get to work. I would get some potato cakes, candy bar, bottle of Coke, go up to work. Within an hour and a half to 3 hours, have a break, do a similar thing. Within an hour and a half to 2 hours, have lunch, usually big pasta meal or a pizza, something like that. Maybe a big Caesar salad, some potato cakes if I had the Caesar salad, again, candy bars and Coke. Back to work, a couple of hours later, another break, repeat. On the way home, I'd go to McDonald's, get a Big Mac, extra pickles, large fries, Coke, usually an ice cream as well. I'd get home, Mum or Dad, Emily, have you had dinner? No. Addiction leads to lies. We would then have dinner. Now, Mum recently said to me she knew something was going on. She could see it in my body. I was so unhealthy. I definitely would say I was morbidly obese. In Australian sizing, I was pushing a size 16, though I think the clothes that I was wearing were too small. So I was definitely a large 14, probably should have been in a 16. So in American sizing, a 16 is a 14. I was having difficulty breathing. If I would bend over, I was losing my ability to breathe, tying up my shoes. I knew something needed to change. I tried body trim, which is eating 3 meals a day, 3 snacks in between those meals, and then 1 after the final meal. Now, the meals are 100 grams of measured meat or egg, and the snacks were 50 grams. And then with the meals, you could have a little bit of sauce, and you could have some low-carb veggies, so peas, corn and carrots were out. I think potatoes were out as well. Then 1 day a week, you could have a cheat meal. The day after that cheat meal was protein only. Can't remember if I had some sauce with that or not. That worked really well. I lost a reasonable amount of weight. This pattern, however, of yo-yo dieting and the unhealthy food addiction, I was 20 at that point, has continued all the way up until June this year. So I have tried many diets. I've tried Weight Watchers, I have tried body trim, I have tried shakes, I've tried weight loss drugs. I've tried so many things. When I found Carnivore, I started Carnivore the 15th of June 2020. And my carnivore journey, again, followed that habit of food addiction, coming in and coming in and coming in. It took quite a while to break it, because of the mentality that I had. I thought I could moderate by having a once in a blue moon day of having some things that were not carnivore. And I would do that every 30 days to celebrate getting through a month. But an alcoholic doesn't do that. So why was I doing that? Well, for the sake of this video and keeping it short, I won't go into that. There's a lot of mental health stuff that goes into that as well, just where my mind was and breaking that addiction cycle. Just like an alcoholic often falls off the wagon and gets back on until they're able to stay on that wagon. But again, they never moderate the alcohol. They always stay away from it. I just kept getting back on the wagon. Fast forward 2 years to June 2022. 1st of June 2022, I went carnivore again, full straight carnivore. In fact, no dairy carnivore, no tea carnivore, no spices, no sauces. Meat, water, salt, eggs, butter, ghee. I didn't even take a photo. I didn't even take my measurements because honestly, I didn't think I was going to stick to it and succeed. Based on the previous 2 years, however, I did. I absolutely did. And my body currently is evidence of that. Right now, it's hard to know exactly what sizing of clothes that I'm in because I'm actually wearing different styles of clothes than what I would have. However, I have a pair of jeans that I wasn't able to wear a year ago. They were so tight, they were uncomfortable. 6 months ago, I was able to wear them. They were tight and they were uncomfortable, but they were bearable. Now, I have to wear them with a belt. I have recently bought a new belt, which is a size smaller than the previous belt. And these jeans are comfortable. In fact, they were skinny leg jeans that are starting to not look like skinny leg jeans. I don't actually know what size I'm actually in jeans. I have at least gone down one size, but they are a high-waisted jean and I am smaller around my waist than I am around my hips. So the jeans that I was wearing around my hips, I don't know what sizing because I'm wearing the waist of the jeans are in a different position. So based on jeans, shorts, dresses, and tops, I would say that I am down 2 dress sizes. And also jackets and hoodies. So one of my hoodies is a large. I'm now in a small. So again, it's a rough estimate. I have lost 22 pounds since the 1st of June. 3 years ago, so in August of 2019, I weighed over 200 pounds, under 205. I can't remember the exact amount, but I do have it written down. It is currently October. 3 years and 2 months later, I weigh 160 pounds. 70, 80, 90, 200. So I've lost 42 pounds and 22 of that has been since June 1st. So just to give you an idea. So the other things that I want to highlight is as a food addict is that you're thinking about food every waking moment and you're also usually dreaming about it. It does not leave your mind. It rages in your body. You can't or you have trouble focusing on anything else. Even when you eat it, you have momentary joy and pleasure, but then you have all the negative feelings afterwards because you know you shouldn't be eating those foods. You know how they make you feel. They make you feel sick. You then feel sick. You're like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? But then you just go and eat more food. So it's a cycle of misery, yet exhilaration. A cycle of self-bashing, regret against yourself because you have no self-control. And when you set goals for yourself and you break those goals, there's an element of disgust and a resentment towards yourself that comes in, but yet you keep eating. I want to add into this emotional eating. Emotional eating is where there's so many emotions going on in your body, conscious but also unconscious, that you turn to something to address that, to numb it out, to not focus on it. For me, that was eating. Some people actually can't eat. I have experienced that once about 1.5 years ago. Actually, I've experienced it a couple of times since, but not to the severity, not to the length of time. Eating, on the other hand, definitely went to that. That's also known as stress eating or comfort eating. So emotional eating, stress eating, comfort eating. So what do I do now that I'm living in food freedom? When those emotions rise up and they're a little too much, I drink a cup of tea. Not on the carnivore version that I'm choosing to do, but occasionally, very occasionally, I will do that. Been a little bit more in the last few weeks, but it's not every day. It's not even every second day. And it's a conscious choice to do it. It's not like I have to do it. I could choose not to. And in some moments, I have chosen not to. So it's not ruling me. I call a friend. I'll watch Netflix. I'll journal. I'll go for a walk outside. I'll get some counseling. I'll also do some coaching. I get coaching through Kelly Hogan at My Zero Carb Life. She has sessions several times a day on Mondays and Wednesdays, No, she is not sponsoring this video. I haven't even told her I'm doing this. I decided to do this video 30 minutes ago. But I do want to mention how important coaching is, especially as a recovering food addict or binge eater, or if you're using carnivore to address health concerns. Carnivore is not a weight loss diet. It does help with weight loss. In fact, it helps some people put weight on. Rach at RibeyeRach, you can find her on Instagram and YouTube. She is a perfect example of somebody who needed to put weight on carnivore and did. I'm an example, and Kelly Hogan's an example of people who need to lose weight and who are and who did. Jump on the internet, go to My Zero Carb Life and sign up to coaching by Kelly Hogan. She is an absolute treat. She is incredibly helpful, and I've been doing her coaching every month since and including June, and I plan to continue doing it. Oh, the other thing about Kelly Hogan's coaching is that her groups are small. There's around 20 to 30 people per group. She is incredibly kind, incredibly sensitive. The groups are super supportive. They're super insightful. And Kelly is not afraid to experiment and try what she has found as a solution to a certain client or several clients, so that she experiences what it's like and she can share from her experience and the knowledge she has obtained. She's a knowledge seeker, so she is constantly studying different things, and it has been immensely helpful for me, the little nuggets, well, the big nuggets that she brings to coaching sessions. So thank you, Kelly. I want to talk about food freedom and what that's actually been like for me, especially now that you know or have a good insight into my history. But first, please like this video. Please share this video, especially if you found it helpful or know someone dealing with similar things that I've been dealing with. Subscribe to my channel, that would be awesome. And come follow me over on Instagram, thatcarnivorelife.gram. That's where you see daily what I eat, some of the thoughts that I have. It's a little bit more different, sorry about the dishwasher if you heard that, than what I share on YouTube. Food freedom. So food freedom is where you can wake up, go about your day, eat your food, go to bed, and you're good. It's not food thoughts plaguing you, torturing you all day long. Food freedom is where you can eat a certain way, a certain diet that you have chosen to eat, that it doesn't rule you, it doesn't make you a slave to that way of eating, you don't feel deprived, and you don't experience negative emotions as a result of what you're eating. Usually because I'm in a habit of having breakfast in the morning, I'll have something to eat in the morning. It's just whatever I pull out of my fridge or freezer that I feel like. Currently this past week, it has been crispy pork belly bites. And usually this week as well, it's been a glass of meat broth, whether it's been lamb or chuck roast. I've mainly been doing the broth because it is good for me, and I like a hot drink in the morning, and I don't want to be having tea and dairy. But some mornings I wake up and I don't feel like eating, and so I don't. Usually on those mornings, I will have an electrolyte. In fact, I've done that all through summer, an LMNT, unflavored electrolyte. If you would like to get some electrolytes that don't have any sugars, artificial sugars, no sugars, whatever, it's zero. Like there's no sweetness in it at all. I have a discount code for you. You can find it in the highlights reel on my Instagram. Then I will eat meat around midday-ish, somewhere between 11 and 2, usually a ribeye steak. This last week, it's been the lamb that I pressure cooked. I had a lamb roast, so I've been eating that. I crisp it up in the fry pan. I usually don't like to eat it cold. And then I usually have a meal at night as well, somewhere between 5 and 9 at night. I will eat. I don't care if it's close to going to bed. I will still eat it if I'm hungry. If I'm thinking about food, I will eat it, because I know that deprivation in the past has been a real issue for me, and I want to make sure that I don't engage those emotions and those physical manifestations that then trip me up from meeting my goals. Now, I'm a woman. We have hormones. So when my hormones are playing around somewhere along in my cycle, I will eat more. And that's usually 4 to 5 meals a day. And then there are some days in my cycle, not many, usually about 5 spread throughout the month, where sometimes I eat 2 and maybe only 1 meals. Very unintentional. They're not bigger meals. I just don't need to eat as much on those particular days. The difference from when I was a food addict to now enjoying food freedom is I'm literally not thinking about those foods until it's a moment of a particular routine or I'm genuinely hungry. For example, today I ate breakfast at home. Again, that's part of a routine. I wasn't hungry. I went to a baby shower and they had food there. You know, baby shower kind of food. Don't want to trigger anyone, so not going to mention it. But they did have some charcuterie boards that had salami and this, I guess it's like American cheddar cheese. It's like the orange and the yellow mottled together. And I knew that firstly, I'm not wanting to eat cheese. And I knew secondly, what was in the salami is things that I don't eat. There's probably garlic in there. There's probably a little bit of sugar in there. I chose in that moment to eat those as well as a matcha. It didn't have sugar in the matcha with a bit of half and half. Again, not the best choices, but way better than what I could have eaten, and definitely distracted my mind from all of those foods that trigger addiction for me. Even just seeing them can be a trigger of addiction, and I didn't want to touch them because then I'm like an alcoholic. I'm off the wagon. Once I ate some of that salami and some of that cheese and I had my tea and I was sipping on that, any of those thoughts around the other foods that were there completely vanished. This would have been 10 minutes of some, not even, maybe 5 minutes of some thoughts that were food addict-like thoughts. Then I have come to my friend's house to babysit, and immediately upon walking through the door, I've got some steak and some pork belly bites that I could cook. And I thought about it and I was like, I think this is like food addict talking. So I decided not to. I even felt like having another tea, but I want to leave those for special occasions or moments where I'm in a triggering environment like the baby shower. So I haven't. And after about 15 to 20 minutes, those promptings vanished. They haven't returned since, and it's been 2.5 hours. So I still have that food for later, and I've thought about when I might eat it. I'm not craving after it. I know it's there and I know I'll eat it. I might even eat it when the baby has dinner, which is 6 hours after I had the tiny amount of snacks at the baby shower. I am babysitting till late today. I may eat when I get home. I may not. I may get some In-N-Out beef patties on the way home. I may not. I don't know. I'm not hankering for it to get to that point where I finish babysitting so I can go past In-N-Out, so I can get those burger patties. No, I'm just aware that it's something I may need to do if I don't want to cook and clean when I get home. That's the kind of preparation it is around food nowadays. Oh, I'm going to be getting home later. Do I want to cook and clean? No. Cheaper to eat at home. How am I feeling? I'll think about it when I leave. There's just so much food freedom. Most of the time when I go to a party, I'm not planning on what I'm going to eat. I'll take food. Sometimes it's food that I don't even eat because I know other people will enjoy it and I know they don't have the issues that I do around food. I don't dream about food. I think in the past 3 years, I've dreamed about food. Well, 2 years of carnivore journey. I've dreamed about food 3 times. Like, that's it. It's just incredible to not have my day focused around food. If I know that I'm going out to a cafe or a restaurant with a friend, because I know how hard it is sometimes for me to be around certain sugar-filled, carb-based foods, I will suggest a cafe or a restaurant where there is something that I can consume, even if it's borderline carnivore, like a tea. And that takes some time to think about that. But if you're not a food addict and you don't eat carnivore and you're planning your birthday dinner, you're going to choose a place that you want to eat. That's the kind of planning that goes into cafes and restaurants for me now. So I'm going out to lunch with a friend on Sunday and I've suggested a restaurant that I can go to that has omelets that I can eat. Yes, I'm having the egg whites, which is not something I normally have. And the omelet has cheese and heavy cream in it. It also has bacon that there's sugar in the curing process of that bacon. But that's okay because it's still carnivore and it's not something I'm eating all the time. And I could go to a place where my mind is tortured by the sweets staring at me in the windows. I wouldn't want to make things more difficult for myself. So I simply choose not to. But again, these aren't thoughts that are controlling me. They're not thoughts that are plaguing me. They're not thoughts that are in my mind every waking moment or when I stir overnight. It's just a little bit of planning like everyone does. If you're watching this video and you're somebody who is plagued by thoughts around food, negativity, when or after eating food, beating yourself up, your health is negatively affected by the type of food that you are consuming, please reach out to me. I would would love to help you. Or if it's a friend, please send them this video. I would love to help them as well. I know my life since probably honestly around 12 years old around food until the age of 35 was plagued with food addiction woes, and that was no way to live. That's literally like 2 decades, over 2 decades. It was awful. And just the freedom that I experience now. Occasionally I see people eating at a restaurant, or I'm at like a Christmas event and I'm like, oh, it would be, or I think about the Christmas event and I'm like, it'd be nice to eat what everyone else is eating. But then I eat my meat and I sit there afterwards and I'm like, oh, I am so glad that I chose to just eat the meat. It has made a world of difference in my life, in my mental headspace, in my physical health. And that's what I want to share with people. Thank you for joining me today at That Carnivore Life. Please remember to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and come follow me on Instagram, thatcarnivorelife.gram. Thank you again for joining me, and I hope you have a great week. I will see you soon.